the heatsink is applied on top of it. So, okay. As you can see, I've got this stuff pretty well smeared over the top of the heat spreader. Now I can take the glove off. Don't need that anymore. And we can actually install the heatsink on top of the processor. Now, Intel heatsinks are noted by these 4 push-pin retainers, and they have arrows on them that, what's kind of funny is that when you install the heatsink, the arrows have to be turned, or the knobs, the top of these retainers have to be turned the opposite way of the arrow. So I'm making sure that all those are turned in the right direction. It's a common mistake that people look at that and see the arrow and think, oh, well, I have to turn it. That's actually for the removal of the heatsink. So make sure these are all with the proper orientation. And then what we can do is set the heatsink down on top of the processor, aligning these 4 push pins with the holes in the motherboard. Make sure they're all there. And then what we have to do is we're going to have to use a lot of force to push these pins down and lock them in place. Now, that's another reason why having the board out of the system in a tray like this is a big advantage, because I can get my hands in there easier to apply the right amount of pressure. I like to do it on opposite corners. You basically push down until you hear them click into place. And then I'll do these 2 corners until they lock into place. And then take a look around, make sure that all of them look the same and that they're all fully seated. These are. Now, once the heatsink is installed, you want to connect the fan, which is right here, and plug that into the CPU fan connector. Most modern processor heatsinks use what's called a 4-wire pulse width modulated fan. And what that 4th wire does is basically it enables an infinitely variable fan speed control. So when you first turn it on, it'll start out slow, it'll spin very slowly. As the processor heats up or warms up, the fan will run faster and faster in order to maintain the proper cooling. So, as you can see, installing the processor and heatsink in this type of a motherboard is not that difficult. That's ready to go. Now, to finish this up, let's install the memory, the RAM in this system. Now, the memory is going to be installed in these sockets here. Now, this uses a triple channel memory, so we're installing memory modules in groups of 3. And you can see 2 different sets of 3 sockets here. There are there's 3 white sockets and 3 blue ones. Now, according to the manual for this motherboard, it says we need to use the white sockets first. That's the first channel, and then first set or bank, and then the blue sockets are the second. So since we only have 3 modules, we're going to install them in the white sockets. So I'm going to move these retaining tabs out to the side on the white sockets. Then I can get my memory module and make sure that the notch on the module is lined up with the notch in the socket. And then I can basically set it into place and then apply sufficient pressure straight down until it locks into place. Make sure these tabs are fully engaged and it's all the way seated down. Then I can go on to the next one, same thing. Press down until it's firmly seated. Make sure these tabs are locked into place. And then finally the last one. And again, make sure they're all in place. You might want to take a closer look, make sure that all the modules do seem to be fully seated. We don't want them on an angle at all. If a module is partially installed and you power the system on, you risk burning the modules and damaging the motherboard as well. So, at this point now, I have the processor and heatsink installed, I have the memory installed. I can now take the motherboard out of this tray and then install the fully loaded motherboard into the system. Now I'm ready to install the motherboard in the case. Now, in order to do that, first thing I need to do is make sure that I've got all the